One of the things the former president's now pardoned campaign chairman is said by federal prosecutors to have done is he allegedly bribed this bank CEO with the dangle of a high-ranking job in the Trump administration for the low cost of $16 million in otherwise totally indefensible loans he never should have gotten and never would have qualified for. But the guy who he was offering federal government positions to, if the guy would only pay Paul Manafort, the guy put in writing what exact jobs he wanted in exchange for his bank's money, which he was stuffing in Paul Manafort's pockets. He made a list. Quote, ambassadors I would like in rank order. Number 1, United Kingdom. Number 2, France. Number 3, Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan, Ireland, Australia, China, United Nations, the EU, Portugal. Portugal after the EU? Come on. He also, in addition to the ambassadorships he would like in rank order, he also had a whole list of what he labeled prospective roles in the Trump administration, which goes to show you, for one thing, the man could spell neither the word prospective nor the word roles. Nevertheless, he thought paying Donald Trump's presidential campaign chairman millions of dollars would mean that he'd be qualified for not only any one of those 12 different ambassadorships. He thought his number one prospective role was that he should be the top civilian official in charge of the United States Army. And in fact, after the dude, agreed to pay up, the Trump transition, in fact, interviewed him to potentially be Secretary of the Army. We got that confirmation on the witness stand from a very well-known witness. Do you remember Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch? He spent like 5 minutes as White House communications director one summer. He testified this week in this bribery trial as a witness for the prosecution. Scaramucci testified this week that the prospective roles bank CEO guy, who was, shortening the lifespan of all the employees at his bank by sending all his bank's money to Paul Manafort, he is so in debt. Scaramucci testified that he did take lots of communications, calls and texts and emails about getting Stephen Calk that job. And in fact, Mr. Calk did interview to be Secretary of the Army, although his name was never put forward as a nominee for that position. Mr. Scaramucci ultimately did kind of offer that the dude could be Undersecretary of the Army if he'd be good with that. Mr. Scaramucci on the witness stand this week in Southern District of New York. He's reading his text messages for the prosecution. December 21st, 2016 at 7:46 p.m. Scaramucci writes, and he's reading out loud his text message in court. Quote, would he take Undersecretary of the Army? Are we double sure? Then he says, if so, I think we can get it done. Prosecutor says, if you can now read the response from Mr. Manafort, starting with the time and then the message. Scaramucci says, okay, so December 21st, 2016, 8:15 p.m., quote, yes, he will take it. Question from the prosecutor. When Mr. Manafort goes, yes, he will take it, who did you understand him to be referring to? Scaramucci says, Stephen Calk. Stephen Calk, the guy who just grabbed his bank by the proverbial ankles, flipped it upside down so all the money would fall out of its pockets and onto Paul Manafort. Yeah, Paul Manafort pulled the necessary strings. I mean, Scaramucci didn't know, as far as we can tell, right, that Manafort was getting paid by this guy. But this is the way the Trump campaign worked. Manafort was the campaign chairman, so he's going to make this guy Undersecretary of the United States Army. Sure, why not? Because that's what the Trump campaign brought to the table. In addition to Mr. Scaramucci, who served as communications director, also served in the Trump transition, another Trump transition official also testified this week about how the vetting process worked around this guy who was involved in the alleged bribery scheme with Manafort. Honestly, in normal administrations, I think former officials will sometimes have like little reunions, little get-togethers. How's your family? You still living in D.C.? Let's catch up. In the Trump administration, they're all just going to meet up at all the criminal proceedings they're going to be witnesses in now. Hey, I haven't seen you since the Rudy Disbarment hearing. Hey, it's great to see you. You going to be at the grand jury next week? You in there too? Let me know how it goes with the subpoena. I know. It's so hard to keep in touch. I keep having to get new phones too. Darn FBI. They got all my stuff. I mean, being an ex-Trump administration official is a busy thing in a way that isn't true for other recent administrations going back to Watergate.